how we can help and apply to your different programs with this roundtable with Charles-Edouard ESCURAT. Charles-Edouard, okay. Interim Chief Executive Officer of the Health Innovation Agency. Then Florence DUPRE, Global Healthcare Officer and Deputy Chief Executive Officer, La Poste Santé Autonomie. And Jeremy Kramer, un anglo-saxon, Cherry Biotech. Thank you to join me. So, Charles-Edouard, you've heard the previous discussion, and of course you're engaged too in the Health Innovation Agency in an international view and approach of the situation, of the problem. And you are building some collaboration with other countries like German or Italian clusters. Can you talk about it with us?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, and sorry for my English, because I'm French, so my English is poor, and I like to say that I'm thrilled to speak about European competitiveness, because I'm more used to talk about French sovereignty and competitiveness, and I think there are many things that are common. First, just to talk, okay, we have some collaboration with Germany and also with Italy, but I'd like to say that first of all, we are facing global changes. I mean, when you're looking at, it was said just before, but when you're looking at what is happening at a global level, from the United States to Asia, you have to be sure that the best way to be more competitive, to more innovative, is the European way. For me, it's my vision, because when we are comparing some countries in Europe, you don't see how there are a lot of changes from the USA to the Asia. And of course, I think about clinical trials, for example. What we want to, and that's why we were very delighted to see, one, the Draghi's report, because when you're looking at the Draghi's report, you can see that there are some words about our system, and we need to have a more integrated system, and I do believe that the system should be more integrated. Secondly, I was very delighted to see that there is a life science strategy at a European level, which is something that we have to take in account in the political way we are discussing at a French level, and I know that's something which is very discussed, and also the Biotech Act. So just to begin the discussion, I would like to say that we are truly convinced that the European level is the best level for the future. It will be long, because you know that to agree 27 countries, or even in reinforced cooperation, it could be long, but we do believe that's a good way. Secondly, if you want to talk about what we do at an international level, I would say that of course one of our mission is to be attractive for the investment. So we do promote French ecosystem and French objects that are attractive for the investment. That's why we are going to bio in US or bio Japan. But that's why also we are connected with some colleagues in other countries in order to promote this ecosystem. And when you're looking at the global picture from the investors' perspective, it's a hard work sometimes.
You also want to work with the EMEA, because there's some difference between FDA, EMEA. We talked a lot about that this morning and at the beginning of the afternoon. So how to accelerate, how to be faster, quicker?
From first, just for this topic, of course, it's a European level, and of course there are some agencies that are working together at a European level in order to harmonize, in order to talk about. On this topic particularly, what we want to do is at a French level being able to simplify and to harmonize those some topics. Just to stay on clinical trials, what we want to do is to have the legislation that could enable people to have more digitalized clinical trial, with decentralized trial also, and that we are working on that at a French level. But I know that, for example, ANSM or HAS work at a European level in order to try to harmonize them, or to understand each other in order to find a way for the evaluation assessment. Sorry.
Thank you. Florence DUPRE, so you work for La Poste Santé Autonomie, an important actor today in France for financing. You're a public company, you invest some money, and you support startups, but not only in France, but startups that can work with other clusters or other countries, like in Spain, Catalonia. Can you talk about it?
Absolutely. So hello, everybody. So as you mentioned, La Poste is an investor, but it is more than an investor. Today, La Poste is doing build-up. So is acquiring company and building up an industrial actor, not just putting money in companies, but developing products and creating ecosystem where our solution, but also the solution of other in France or solution from elsewhere in Europe can join, because the biggest issue we have to move innovation at the European level, you mentioned the regulatory part, which is quite developed. But the biggest issue is that when it comes to the industrial actor, we all go to Europe separately. And there is no way that we can build up European actor if we go separately. So the aim of La Poste Santé Autonomie is to create, because our role is a kind of aggregator. Aggregator. Okay, you understand what I mean. So we create ecosystem, pathology by pathology, and we go as far as working on health pathway, not only care pathway, because care pathway is the hospital, the retail, but when you go to health pathway, you take into account the home, okay, and that's where La Poste, and I put my N here when I speak about La Poste, because as you say, we are a public, support, we're supporting public policy. So when you put home, plus the care pathway, you also go to the prevention. And that's the reason why we have answered to the appel à projet from the IAS on the prevention, the challenge prevention. And we don't go alone. We go together with startups with two aims. The aim is to prove concretely that when you improve the health pathway, and I think it was not the last one roundtable, but the other one, explaining that you have the clinical trial, and then you have the real life, and there is a gap, and nobody wants to pay for the gap, which is normal, okay? It's our money. So we want to prove that when you better organize care and health pathway, then you have a better health results, and we want to prove it. That's the reason why we have supported the appel à projet, and we are resubmitting this week several projects.
And you're looking for a global European model from a local stage that could bridge the gap between the EU and the US.
Absolutely, because the biggest issue we have also is if you take FDA, EMEA, I mean, it's the same for all the country, more or less. But innovation can only exist if it is used, okay? Otherwise, it's not an innovation. So the biggest challenge for everybody that are working on innovation is to find money, to be financed, not only by financer, but also by the market. So building up, and that's the reason why we work with Catalonia, because they are really doing value-based healthcare, okay? So if you attack the European market, having in mind not only the regulatory part, but also the market access part, building up product solution aggregated into a kind of ecosystem where you can capture the data, because one other issue in digital is that the data are in the application. So nothing is communicating with anything. So we are building companies to do interoperability, which is completely stupid. So we need to find new ways, and we are at the edge with Catalonia in particular, but other actors like Vita Group, on building, and we have a solution which is called Cortex in La Poste, and that's the reason why I joined La Poste, because 3 years ago you kindly invited me when I was president of Medtronic, and I joined La Poste because in La Poste we have Cortex, which is a common data layer, and when you have a common data layer, you can put your application in the ecosystem or the application of the other part of the health pathway. And when you do that, you structure the data, you use OpenEHR, you use OMOP, you use FHIR, then you have systems that are completely open source and everybody speaks the same language, and then you don't need to do interoperability because it's interoperable by design as it's data
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
Right. Thank you. We'll go back to this innovation and talk about this. And Jeremy Kramer, Cherry Biotech. Maybe at first we could talk about Cherry Biotech. What is it exactly?
Yeah, for sure. So first, thank you for the invitation. So Cherry Biotech, it's a company that make a solution as an alternative to animal testing to develop new drug. So the technology that is behind is what we call organ-on-a-chip organoid. So what is at stake is we reconstruct in an in vitro situation I will say the complexity of tissues and organs. Of course, we don't build big organ, but part of the tissues that are functional. So, for example, in Cherry Biotech, we are working a lot on breast cancer with Gustave Roussy. We are working on this, especially in immunocompetent therapy. And we are working a lot also on metabolic disease, especially diabetes. So we develop adipose tissues. And the specificity of our technology, we talk about interoperability just before, is that we develop all these devices in order to be able to have this interoperability with all the workflow of the preclinical drug development.
Okay, but here it's interesting that you be there because you represent SMI, supported by Europe because you got the accelerator grant last year.
Yeah, just last year, and I think it's super important to underline this. If we talk about competitiveness about Europe, we get this financement tools last year, which was a really great thing for us, because as you know, the dynamic of the investment in Europe, we need to bridge the gap. So it's really the mission of this kind of instrument tools. So this will really support and help us to accelerate, I will say, to develop the maturity of the product, because it's what is at stake. And we talked just before about the maturity of the market, which is another hand, and this is where we need to push.
And you told me that there was a fragmented market. The fragmentation in Europe is a problem for you to address.
Yeah, I will say not specifically the fragmentation. What is at stake is, maybe to give a bit of context, today animal testing are mandatory in Europe. Okay? So we are really in a transition market. So far we talk a lot about this, but the reality of the market is not done yet, in Europe at least.
Before releasing any molecule, medicine, you've got to go through animal testing anyway.
Exactly. So this is the challenge for us, despite the development of the technology, is really how to penetrate the market. And this market is framed by EMA, as we talked about just before. In front of us, we have US, of course, and the same. Joe Biden, in December 2022, just cancelled the obligation from the FDA, the obligation to test.
To use animal testing.
Animal testing, exactly. So
it can be virtual now. It can be in silico. It can be other solutions, organoids and other solutions.
Exactly. And for us, what is at stake is really, okay, like in 24 months, US FDA, they provide, based on this new regulation, Modernization Act 2, they provide a roadmap, which is crystal clear now. There's monoclonal antibody, there's a clear focus. And in Europe, I will say the Parliament asked to the Commission to phase out animal testing in 21. We still don't have a roadmap. It's supposed to arrive Q1 or Q2 2026. So for a startup like us, what is at stake is we need to have a clear guideline. We talked about with Marek just before. And it's hard, to have a common will to decide. So I really want to push on the fact that we should have, pilot projects where we take the risk, and if it doesn't work, we'll come back later. We'll cancel. But what I want to underline is what I expect, especially in Europe, is really that we take more risk. We need to take more risk because we need to win velocity. We need to really improve the
especially
pace.
towards the US in comparison
Yeah,
with
if
the
we
US.
want to be competitive, because at the end of the
In
day,
Asia, maybe.
Exactly.
Okay, so Marek, you've heard everyone. So what's your reaction, especially about the last speech, maybe because of the velocity and need of taking risks?
You know, the speed is the key here, and we hope that there's one element. There are two elements. One element is if you have already a solution to diffuse it across Europe as soon as possible. So this is about role of partnerships, bringing together the actors who can understand your language, because this is both industrial and research language, and then if you speak other foreign language, but you're at the same scientific field, you understand even better than language itself. If I speak to the Polish person on biotech, he would tell me the nomenclature I wouldn't understand. The point is that we create this platform. So in order to accelerate diffusion, this is what we can do at EU level. EU partnerships. We started with Euroclusters, for example. You were, I hope it was a good experience to work with Austria, with Styria, because you were in the same with Romania, with Polish Life Science. So this is one. But there's another one, is access to finance, and here comes, in most practical terms, again, the financial literacy is important, and knowing how to reach out to financing sources and do the business plan. Really being able to prepare Excel so that you can find the financial mix that can be can convince investors, and that's why I advocate as your commission for cluster coordinators, either to liaise very much with the financial intermediaries who have this financial literacy, or to have them as members as well, so that they can help you exactly preparing the financial journey of your research to commercialization. And at the EU level, access to finance, there will be this funding. The funding will go into de-risking, mainly, so guarantees, mainly going through financial intermediaries, and here public BPI. It's another story, because before joining the Commission, I actually worked in banks and private commercial banks. So the appetite of risk is, of course, higher in the private commercial risk rather than, but here it's very much, when you go to venture capital, 70–80% of transactions are in IT. So AI in medicine can play, but if you go for biotechnology, you need 10 years of, then you need patient capital. And here, what is envisaged as well is to try to actually in Europe we are sitting on savings from pension funds, for example. So there is idea in order to mobilize a bit pension funds in order to use them for more risky projects. So yeah.
You say you must be more patient, but in the US it's much quicker. How do you explain that?
First of all, they have one integrated capital market. You can get very quickly funding. You have lots of venture capital sharks who are, looking around, and they are simply more appetite for risk. This is the story.
Basically.
And as well the intensity of capital available for this kind of investments. Because then it's about cost of capital, and if you have more capital available, your risk is lower, then your cost of capital is lower, then your return on investment is higher, than we have in Europe. And we have fragmented market, capital market, then we have higher risk, then we have lower rate of rate of return, and that's why the people are escaping there instead of investing here. Savings, the capital market is the key issue to solve in order to really have scale up, and then yeah. But this is the topic for my colleagues from DG FISMA.
And it may be very difficult sometimes to have 28 countries on the same page who want to go ahead together. Sometimes there's some competitions. How is it difficult for you to manage these situations? When the countries don't want to go to in the same direction, for example.
No, this is the case exactly. This is the case. And so here, actually, I had the pleasure to have experience in the Polish presidency right now. So I was, because I was always in the European Commission, and then I had this 8 months working as a presidency of the Council, and I must say everything is possible. The thing is that 27 member states, all they have their own interests.
Yep. And
this takes time to convince and to find solutions. So this is it's possible. I think the need will force member states to move in the same direction, because otherwise we will be losing competitiveness and it will fire back. We know that both in services and in capital, the free movement is quite difficult to achieve at EU level, but I think there is no other choice if we want to be competitive. Otherwise, we will be still fragmented and we will be talking again. So I think things are moving, but it takes time.
Right, okay. Do you want to add something about what Marek said? Anyone? Yes. Okay, Charles-Edouard.
Thank you. I do agree with some, but I think there is something that when you don't just focus on EU, but at the global level, I think there are some things that can be done. I do believe that some aspect of the legislation, the EU legislation, I mean, for competitiveness, is quite okay when you want to make a unique market, but I do believe that it's not the same arms we have against USA, for example, or Asia. I do believe that we need to have legislation, but for example, state aid, quite sometimes, and I do have an investment plan in France, and sometimes it's quite tricky to understand why we can't do something, not n'importe quoi, but we can't do something, and in US they can. And as a general manager of Agence d'innovation en santé, everybody tell me, but look at the BARDA, look at what they are doing, look at the state aid, look at the public procurement, look at how they can make champion. And I do believe that we don't.
And that's true anyway.
Anyway, it's not completely true, because you have to see what are the IPs, you have to see more focus.
In detail.
But I think that if you think about moving forward for a more integrated market, not only from an EU perspective, but a global perspective, it's something that should be challenged. And I think this is the good momentum. For example, I know quite well the public procurement. I saw the public procurement moving from a very juridical aspects to something that can be supported for public policies. And I do believe that state aid could be challenged in order to be sure that it could be a tool for the European competitiveness. Sorry, but
okay, no, yes, okay, yes.
Yeah, maybe one comment.
Florence.
If we want to have one market, there in healthcare, it's pretty difficult because our healthcare system are completely different from one country to the other. So there is no healthcare system at the European level. Each
unified
country,
healthcare system.
Pardon?
There is no unified
Absolutely
healthcare
not.
system.
Each country, from an historical point of view, from a financing point of view, is organized. So we need to face this reality, because if you want to change reality, you need to understand where we start from. And so there is a need that we, when we are a French company, we, from the beginning, understand that we will not have a unified market. So we need to develop solutions taking into account the differences that are in all the countries. And if you do that, you have a French solution, but you have a European solution. And because we can't wait for regulation, that's what I was saying. We need to do also this kind of bottom-up. So we are working on some solution. You know, I'm not an IT person, okay? But at the end of the day, your information system is structured based on the organization of care. So if we manage to get out of this application-centric information system that we have in all the countries, Epic being one of them in the US, then we have a chance to do open source and to do a new way of building up a market. Even though we will not have a unified market, we will have the same approach and we will take into consideration each country organization. So you need to have that from the start. And that's where we are working in La Poste Santé Autonomie, to help the startups also to speed up on that with us. Okay, thank you. Do you have any question or remark to one of the panelists? Maybe Marek, do you want to add something? No questions? It's the very end of the day.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I will come back to a comment already made, but just to make sure we are aligned. So in a world where China does quite what they want every day, and they have rules that they decide, that are good rules for them. In the US, you have a guy who changes his mind 3 times a day. How can we bring more flexibility, or do we need more flexibility in the way we see European rules in order to get a unified market, in order to see changes in the future around common healthcare policies based on best practice in some countries, whatsoever? Because at the moment, we all understand that we have rules, and some of those rules in a very difficult world, I would say, could be maybe a bit different in order to facilitate the life of European entrepreneurs, and so maybe European citizens. Is there any discussion around that, any consideration about that?
Yes. Marek?
Actually, the approach is very much on focusing on sectors. Yeah, and it came with defense, but as well with energy-intensive industries through the carbonization and the clean industrial deal. So steel industry, chemical. This were tackled automotive first, and there were some already works on simplification. Now there's more and more discussion about getting into implementing and delegating acts. What are the elements which we can simplify, but very much really on sectors, because then the devil is in detail, and this is very nitty-gritty work. And it's good. I haven't heard anything about health, to be honest. I must admit. I imagine there should be some works on this. But this is the way, at least from our president, the message is very clear. We need to go for, and in the State of the Union, the Commission was talking about. I mean, our president von der Leyen was talking about the single market roadmap, and she mentioned 5. It wasn't health there. It was energy, it was telecommunication, it was capital, it was the 5th freedom, so research freedom, and it was improving really the single market, particular services in the single market. Health is not there, wasn't mentioned there, because it's not that full competence of the Commission as well, neither. But there is one in the European Competitiveness Fund. There are 4 areas mentioned of financing. The first is exactly the decarbonization and clean tech. The second is digital leadership. The 4th is as well resilience, security, defense, and here, to be honest, as well. I mean, dual use stories. We are having every second Wednesday at 8:30 at the cluster collaboration.eu cluster talks, where we are talking about the main legislations coming from the EU, which are important for clusters. Next one will be exactly on security and dual use. You can come as well. We have as well one Euro clusters with health cluster from Ukraine, you can imagine how experienced they are now. Yeah. So and how much lessons we can learn from. But talking about this, so and the fourth area is, and here health is mentioned explicitly. Biotech, health, agri-food as well. So it's mentioned as an area of funding. But I think maybe this is a role of clusters to give feedback to the Commission where simplification is needed, so that this area is as well tackled.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or remarks, comments? No? It's yes?
Maybe just to say that there is hope.
Florence?
There is hope. Maybe at the end of the day, there is
It's
hope.
good to
It's hope.
finish. Good conclusion.
Because when you have a look on the healthcare system in the US and speaking with the Mayo Clinic, which is described as the most patient-centric clinic, and discussing with Chris Ross and presenting to him the way we want to focus on health pathway, making everything communicate with everything, they don't have that in the US. So there is place for innovation coming from Europe because we have a more complex environment. And
it's a good lab.
Yeah, it's a good lab. And if we find a way to go together and to build solutions that are European by design, because even though the systems are completely different, you have patterns. Value-based healthcare, population health management, it's everywhere, okay? So you have patterns, you can build solutions from scratch with the European in head, but one thing that is important is that you need also to make choice, and that's the most difficult. If you want to do good health pathway ecosystem, you need to have curated solutions. It's not Netflix, okay? You don't put everything that is on earth. You find pathology by pathology, the best application, you demonstrate that it brings value from a money perspective, then you can build up actors and compete at the international level and change our lives, because that's the most important. Change our lives, our children, our parents, our partner.
What a beautiful conclusion, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much, Florence. Yeah, well, so thank you very much, all of you. Marek, thank you very much for coming. Real pleasure. Charles-Edouard ESCURAT, Jérémy et Florence DUPRE. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Eh bien, c'est la fin de cette journée Medicen Day.